okay, no, oh yeah, you had your hand up a long time ago.
I have just a simple question. How long did it take you to make the film?
Shot for 22 days, and then took 3 years to edit.
One of the reasons I asked, I've been reading this thing right now, and it says that the essential quality to become an artist is that you have to have patience.
I'm not a patient person.
Working on that took some heart. That took some heart. Heart, not patience. Heart.
Thank you.
There's one other.
Yeah, my question was, or is there is a lot that Taika and Toby don't say to each other, and even Taika experiences both good and bad things, but doesn't necessarily talk about them with anyone, but there's still this warmth that you feel when she's experiencing those things. So I was curious, like, was that a decision that you made to portray them and her in that way on purpose?
Yes. It's an interesting question, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the film is 25 years old and it was made in a different time. A time before social media, a time before people constantly took pictures of themselves and told everybody how they were feeling every 5 minutes, and a time before there were words like self-care. That was not a thing. Pica doesn't take a bubble bath after Malik dies. She just gets sicker. And that's like more like, I think even how things really work today, even while people are posting their self-care regimens on social media, life is really difficult and stressful, and I'm not really sure that people, at least my generation, had the expectation that just because you had feelings, everybody should listen to them. You know what I mean? I don't know, it sounds horrible, but I'm just not sure that that was an actual, like, expectation. Like, everybody has problems, right? So, at what point were they do more than just try and look after each other? At what point where they say, I have so much anxiety about blah, 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 blah. At what point in the narrative of a relationship would that happen? I don't know. It just never occurred to me that there should be a moment where this is the scene where we talk about our feelings. They're like, they just killed somebody. They just want to forget it ever happened. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
You have a question?
Well, I didn't have a question, just a comment. I was here actually in this same theater about a week ago to see another film, and it was such a pleasant surprise, a complete surprise, to see the preview for your film come up before that film, because I've heard of your film and have known your work for a decade or two, and I'm finally glad to be able to see this legendary film. It took on kind of mythic, legendary status for being so rarely seen, but you know, for me, it's an important piece of your history that people who have come to your work more recently might not be aware of, or if they are aware of, haven't seen. And I think it fleshes out the definition of your practice and your work and your history in a very important way. So I'm glad the film is back.
Thank you, Dawood.
Am I missing anything else? Oh, go ahead. Oh, hey, Wendy.
Can you say a little bit about the character of the mother? I was very fascinated by her complexity, not always, obviously, not as sympathetic, and I liked what you did with that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, she's a person, and she and Pica have it's a household of 3 women, right? And they're all doing what they can. I don't know if it's the best they can do or the worst they can do. They're doing what they can. You know, this mother, we never really talked about it explicitly, but, you know, those parties in that house have something to do with the way that Pica's mom makes her money. You know, that's a hard way to make a living, like running a club out of your house, you know. It's exhausting, I'm sure. And again, like, I wasn't trying to make a film in which I was representing Black people. I was just trying to make a film about people, you know. And this is just a mom, and a kind of mom that I always found intriguing, because my parents were quite the opposite. They were not the kind of laissez-faire. That was not their parenting style, and I always envy people who did have parents like this. But then when you take a close look, you know, there's another side to that, that Pike is also dealing with. Yeah. Suzanne?
I don't really have a question, but like on the mother thing, I love that there were the two, like when you said the mother, I'm like, which mother? Because there were the two mothers, you know, and kind of the distancing and the not being there in different ways, and
Right.
it was just handled so subtly, and so it just kind of unfolds.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like hitting you over the head of it, which of course I wouldn't expect from you. And then I just wanted, like, I also loved seeing kind of some of the camera work that would just kind of drift off, you know, so I'm like, there's kind of a Minha influence.
100%. We went to film school together as undergrads.
And then when people are talking, you know, like, oh, and the trajectory of this art, and it wasn't in your first thing you did in undergrad. Remember hanging those panels?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's always been there. You've always been this
I know, why was
badass.
I not aware of that? That's what's so interesting.
And like, just, yeah, and seeing narrative and the way that connects, right, the last trip I took before, the whole stay at home was to New York City for, Lynn Sachs' film, and then went to see your show at the Whitney.
Oh.
And that was so stunning. And the comment earlier about the way that the women looked, like that was also so present there. And the relationship between like spatial dynamics and narrative and the flatness of film and the like richness of that, and and this remaster is just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's yeah, you've always been all of this from when I mean, at least from undergrad.
Oh, thanks, Suzanne. But can I say one thing about the pretty women in the film you're talking about? It's a film called Sojourner. And I recently learned that that film is sort of like low-key criticized because the women are too pretty. And they look too gorgeous. And it's like, it's just a fashion shoot. And I'm talking about like visionary Black feminists.
Wow.
and people just see like, are offended that I'm like putting a lot of like heavyweight attention on the way that the women look. And actually the women are reenacting another photograph that to me did look like a fashion shoot, so there's a reason for that. But it's interesting that in one sort of like, I guess, industry, there's like a disinterest and a kind of care about the appearance of some women, and then in another industry, a kind of like disdain for it. I don't know how those women were supposed to look, like for my work to be taken seriously, but apparently they're too pretty. This makes me want to double down on it. Like the next film is going to be ridiculous. I'm going to spend all my money on makeup artists and stylists. All of it.
Everything about it was rich and beautiful. Like, so like every little detail in it. So how you're going to have that all beautiful and detailed, and then you're going to make the women.
I know, right? It's like I started as an art direction, and so I'm all about the set. Everything in the frame, everything you see in the frame has been thought about. You know what I mean? To me, there's all the story in there. Like Pika's room is like, without her in it, you might know what kind of person lived there. You know what I mean? It's so important to me.
Yeah, and that space made this intimacy in the narrative. Sorry.
No, yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, one more question. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much. That was really incredible. So one thing that I was really curious about was that I thought was really amazing was like the nuances and the contradictions in thinking about masculinity and femininity. And part of what I'm curious about is the decision to use like what you call this kind of like hashtag, this proto hashtag about men being endangered in this framing about her proving their existence in order to tell a story about women being in jeopardy. That there's this attention to the men while these women are sick, they're victims, they're in danger. So what I was just curious about the decision to use a framing about men as endangered species to tell a story about women.
I didn't think, I was really naive in the night. Okay, I did it very deliberately because that was a hashtag in the 90s. It was like all the music, everybody was talking about this, and also the political leadership was very much on this rhetoric that if we just make the world better for young black men, then our communities will heal and everything will be good. And literally nothing was ever said about young black women. And I was just like really tired of it. So I wanted to make a film that was about black girls and all of the jeopardy that they are constantly subjected to, even within the black community, not just without, like, you know what I mean? I was naive in the sense that by using that hashtag, people would fixate on that. So it's wonderful now that like people are actually interested in Pika and Toby. But when the film came out in the 90s, people just want to talk about these sociological issues. Like, let's talk about the endangerment of black men. Oh, your film is about the endangerment. And it's not. It's about two black girls who are trying to live. You spend 82 minutes with two black girls. You know what I mean? And so I think really I would never do that again. I would never like plant such a huge red herring because we live in a patriarchal society. So like if you give people patriarchy, they'll just nom 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 nom. Even if it's on a plate, that is like with all these other goodies. They'll just focus on the masculine narrative. You know what I mean? That was my mistake. You know.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure in my mind, Toby's old boyfriend, he's a slasher, right? I mean, he
Yeah.
turned out to be the slasher.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm thinking, am I just, I just didn't know. I mean.
And they killed him.
Yeah. All right. Well,
On that note, I want to thank you all.